These are the struggle foods I grew up on. When times were tight and the fridge was empty, these are some of the things we'd whip up to stop a gap. Today I'm looking back on those meals and grading each one by how cheap it was, how filling it is, and how good it actually tastes. A lot of these were easy, affordable meals growing up, but now, not so much. I'll save those one for later in the video. For now, let's start with one of the most popular struggle foods, bread. Throughout history, bread has always been affordable, versatile, and a solid way to fill up when times are tough. The most popular bread growing up, and probably even now, is hard dough. It's a bit denser and more toothsome than a standard white bread, and it comes in a lot of different styles. This is a standard hard dough bread. There's something very satisfying about breaking bread instead of cutting it. First up, we have bread and butter. Mummy would buy a warm loaf of hard dough bread on Thursday or Friday, so this was a late week stopgap meal for me. We would also sometimes buy half a bread at the local shop if we couldn't afford a full one. For this, I'm using actual butter. We called margarine butter growing up, and a lot of people still do, whether that's a solid stick type or the soft spreadable kind. Margarine was cheaper than real butter and what everyone used. Very easy. Takes 30 seconds, very filling, and a warm hard dough bread with butter is actually very delicious. I avoid it nowadays, but bread and margarine is a solid 6.3 out of 10. Bread and butter is a 6 out of 10. Butter was and still is much more expensive, so it's not really a struggle food, but it definitely tastes better. Next, we have bread and pear, aka avocado. It's the height of the pear season here in Jamaica right now, so they're cheap. But growing up, these were free because we had access to plenty of trees. Avocado makes a rich creamy filling for a sandwich. This is struggle food, so I'm just chugging it onto the bread. We can't forget a little sprinkle of salt. That really brings out the sweet creamy flavor of the avocado. Slap another slice of bread on that and we have a solid 8 out of 10 snack. The pear was usually free and this made a delicious and filling sandwich. The avocado is native to Mexico, but once it came to Jamaica through the Spanish, it rapidly spread. Today, we enjoy hundreds of varieties with different shapes, textures, tastes, and colors. With so many options, there's something for everyone. I really love this sweet variety that stays extremely firm even when fully ripe. If I didn't know any better, I would think that this was totally green. Even the seed coat sticks to the flesh like a green avocado would. But don't let that fool you. This is one of the best tasting pears I've ever had. And that brings us to one of the biggest struggle foods for me growing up, pear. Of course you have to add a bit of salt, but having half a pear right in the skin was a must during pear season. Salt really brings out the sweetness. It wasn't very filling, it only stopped a small gap, but being free and delicious made it a winner. 8 out of 10. Wow, that is buttery, melt in your mouth goodness. Avocados are great, but they're extremely perishable. Once they fully ripen, it's all downhill from there. I got these for $100 each, so I got extra, but now they are getting overripe, so I need to do something with them. Would hate to waste all of that flavor. It's a good thing I have Recipe. This all-in-one recipe organizer, shopping list, meal planning app is a beast. I found this easy recipe on TikTok to use up my avocado, so I'm just going to share it to Recipe. I'm making a batch of guacamole, but I don't have all the ingredients, so I'm making a few substitutions. The best part, we can edit the recipe and add notes to document how we did. Perfect for future reference. If I want to add my own recipe, I can do that as well. I love pressed plantain as a snack, so I'm making some to go with our guac. Pressed plantain is really simple, but saving it means I can easily share it to friends and family. Snap a quick pic for a recipe and add the ingredients and instructions, and that's it. I'm adding this recipe to my editing snacks cookbook, so I don't have to think too hard about what to make for my editing sessions. That's the Recipe app. They will be in the first link in the description, so go check it out. Delicious. So last night I had some very good brown stew pork for dinner. I purposely made this with a lot of gravy. Most Jamaican stews are loaded with gravy and cheaper veggies like carrot, potato and broad beans to really stretch the flavors of the protein. That brings us to our next struggle food, bread and gravy. I'm using rolls for this, but in Jamaica we call these peg bread. This one is the same hard dough, so not much difference in terms of taste. Whenever we made a stew, we would save all of that extra gravy to have with a bit of bread for a solid 8 out of 10 meal. It's more filling than just bread and butter. The gravy really carries a lot of the rich savory flavors. That is good. But now let's get a bit more struggly. Because bread was cheap, there were some crazy combinations for struggle food. If we have bread and nothing to pair it with, we get creative. Sweetened condensed milk has always been a Jamaican pantry staple, so naturally we would try to pair it with bread. Another unexpected pairing is syrup. This is cola champagne, but fruit punch and pineapple are popular flavors. Adding a sweet liquid was a great way to feel like you're not just eating a dry slice of bread. Bread and condensed milk, that's sweet and milky, but it's nothing special. 6 out of 10. This is real struggle food because even though it's easy, I wouldn't go out of my way to make this on a regular day. Bread and syrup is giving me the same vibe. 6 out of 10. It's just sweet and doughy. We can't talk about struggle food without talking about what we use to wash it down. Next, we have the very quick and easy sugar and water. Older folks call this beverage. All we do is dissolve sugar in water. Really can't get cheaper than that. Solid 6 out of 10. But we can do one better. These are lime, and growing up we had a few lime trees, so these were free as well. We also had a lot of bitter or sour orange that we use exclusively for beverage. Less popular was lemon, but still had it from time to time. What I loved to do was combine multiple citrus fruits when I could find them. Let's give these a quick roll so we can get out the maximum amount of juice. That sour from the citrus transformed beverage into a solid refreshing drink. The only thing this needs is some ice and we are in business. We can pair this with any of the other struggle foods in this video to elevate it a few points higher. So, on its own, beverage with lime or lemon is a solid 7.3 out of 10. While we are still on beverages, let's talk about tea. This is Cersei. It's an extremely bitter plant that grows wild in Jamaica and it's a subspecies of the bitter melon. Cersei, just like its larger relative, is commonly used in medicine to treat digestion issues and blood sugar regulation. I have some Cersei growing on my fence, so I get a few pieces from time to time. I like to dehydrate it for longer term storage, but whether dried or fresh, boiling Cersei gives us a really bitter tea. Sweetening it with a bit of honey or sugar makes it go down easier. Cersei is more of an acquired taste. I have been having this since I was little, so I think I acquired the taste. But that's still a very intense bitter. It doesn't taste pleasing, but I always feel better after having Cersei. 5.5 out of 10. Now, let's move from bitter to sweet. Jamaican chocolate tea. In Jamaica, all hot beverages are called tea. Today we can call this a struggle because of how expensive it is, but growing up this was a cheap treat. Rich, delicious, comforting, and it gives you a crazy energy boost to get through your Sunday morning chores. Chocolate tea starts with fresh cacao pods. The seeds are removed, fermented, sun-dried, and then toasted. Once the outer shell is removed, these are blended. My grandmother would use her large wooden mortar to painstakingly break down the beans. Once it turns into a smooth paste, it was cooled, then shaped in a variety of ways. This made storage much easier. To make our chocolate tea, we'll grate our chocolate stick and boil it with milk, and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. Some people add vanilla for an extra hit of fragrance. Once the grated chocolate is in, we can add a bit of salt to tie everything together. The smell will always make you salivate. Sweeten that with some condensed milk and we are in business. Pairing this with any other struggle food made you feel like you were living like a king. 7.5 out of 10. Rich, comforting, and gives you a boost of energy. If you didn't have this for free like me, then it's not much of a struggle food. Some mornings it was chocolate tea, other mornings it was cornmeal porridge. Or Evelyn, because having cornmeal porridge for dinner usually meant things were tight. Cornmeal porridge works because it's simple, quick, and delicious. Depending on what's available, the base for the cornmeal porridge would be milk, coconut milk, or just water. Warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg were added for flavor. Before adding the cornmeal, we first have to mix it in cold water so we don't end up with any lumps. Add it to the hot spice liquid and cook it until it gets thick and silky smooth. Season lightly with Jamaican brown sugar. Pour out a bowl, then adjust the sweetness with condensed milk. I never used to do this, but I'm finishing this with a bit of powdered cinnamon and toasted coconut. I didn't complain too much when I had porridge for dinner because it fills you up and it tastes great. This is a banger, and even without the fancy fluff, this struggle meal is a solid 8 out of 10. Next, we have some great one-item fillers. I grew up in a rural farming era, so these items were always free and accessible. Roasting starchy foods over coals feels very nostalgic. My apartment setup won't allow me to make a wood fire, so I have to do this on the stove. Ovens work too, but the char is part of the experience. First up, we have roast breadfruit. This is a very recognizable struggle food. Breadfruit trees produce a crazy amount of fruit and they are pretty widespread in Jamaica. So naturally, they were cheaper and more accessible. If you're from rural Jamaica, one of the most iconic struggle food is roast or sometimes boiled breadfruit with white butter. White butter is just code for salt, so it doesn't sound too bad. If you get a good quality breadfruit, this is actually decent, slightly sweet, starchy, and very filling. I will give this a very respectable 6 out of 10. Next up, we have raw sweet potato. Unlike with breadfruit that sometimes hit or miss, this local sweet potato variety is consistently delicious. Growing up, raw sweet potato did not feel like struggle food. This always felt like a real treat. Just like with roast breadfruit, sweet potato benefits from a little sprinkling of white butter. Smoky, sweet, naturally rich, 7 out of 10. Next up, we have roast yam. I love the sweet earthy taste that this has. With a bit of white butter, this gets a 7 out of 10. I enjoy it just as much as a sweet potato. But there's an easy way to massively improve these struggle meals, and this was my go-to. Just like when I was growing up, these are just whatever aromatics I could find in my fridge. To my fry pan, I'm adding a big splash of oil. Go ahead and add in those veggies. I have onion, scallion, tomatoes, and scotchy, but this was sometimes only onion and hot pepper. Season with white butter and black pepper. And simply saute to bring out those flavors. This made the struggle feel a little less struggling. Once ready, grab your roasted food. And put a little bit of those sauteed veggies and the oil on top of them. That oil adds great flavor and mouthfeel to the meal, and the veggies bring in a lot of savoriness. This smells incredible. I think the roast breadfruit benefits the most from this. It absorbs way more of that flavor and transforms into a really delicious treat. With the sauteed veggies, this turns into an 8 out of 10 dish. The yam also gets a bump to 8 out of 10. For the sweet potato, the sauteed veggies don't work so well, but still an improvement over just white butter. 7.5 out of 10. Sauteing veggies in oil to add flavor is a great way to improve a lot of struggle foods, and this one is no different. These are boiled green bananas. Some of our Caribbean neighbors call them figs. Growing up, bananas were plentiful, especially because they are so low maintenance. So when hunger hit, simply boiling a few fingers was an easy way to fill the gap. We already have our sauteed oil, so let's add a bit here. Boiled green banana and oil is a classic struggle food for a lot of people. These take just a few minutes to cook, so they're quick, calorie dense, and the oil makes the dish more dynamic and palatable. A perfect struggle meal. Let's taste this and rate it out of 10. It's really good, a lot of flavor and it feels filling, but unlike with roast breadfruit and sauteed veggies, I wouldn't go out of my way to make this today. It's personal because I think green bananas are average, but I can't deny how cost effective this is and the taste is still great, so a solid 8 out of 10. Green banana with oil gets the job done, but let's move on to the most recognizable struggle foods. These are some randomly shaped boiled dumplings. I'm going to have this with a bit of butter. Traditionally it was margarine because that's cheaper, but this right here is a struggle food that probably all Jamaicans know. The most basic dumpling is very straightforward and usually the ones we make. It's just flour, water and salt. Mix all of that together to form a dough. Then shape them however you want. I really love the thin cartwheel shape. Place them in boiling water and cook them for 15 to 20 minutes. You want to add your butter while it's still piping hot. Filling, satisfying and tasty. Whether you live somewhere rural or in the town, this is equally as accessible. Dumpling and butter is the most popular struggle food for a good reason. 9 out of 10. Big plus with the nostalgic factor. You can get really creative by making different types of dumpling and mix it up a bit. Cornmeal, green banana, yam and sweet potato can all be combined to add variation to plain old white flour. If we make too much, we would save them overnight and fry them the next morning for some fry over dumplings. Equally as popular as dumpling and butter is rice and butter. The theme here is the same. Combine a cheap, calorie-dense starch with a flavorful fat like butter or margarine. Simply steam a bit of white rice with salt until the grains are tender. Just like with the dumpling, we want that rice still piping hot when we add the butter. This is a lot less effort than dumpling and butter, and for the same price we can feed more people. Unlike dumpling and butter, rice doesn't fill you up as much and it's less pleasing to eat. It's really not a lot of flavor unless you add something else. 6.5 out of 10. Rice and butter is more of a meal, but if you want a quick light bite to hold you for a while, then water crackers are perfect. Excelsior water crackers or tough crackers have been in production for over 120 years. Originally made in wood-fired brick oven in our capital, Kingston. It's simple, made from only flour, water, salt and yeast. These simple snacks have been keeping generations of Jamaicans going. Fairly recently, they came out with a cinnamon flavor crackers, which I enjoy very much. These are tough and dry, so only masochists alone eat these by themselves. This is bushmint. It's a more shrub-like member of the mint family. It has a sharp, sweet, very pleasing minty aroma. Unlike the common spear or peppermint, this has a more robust flavor that leans more medicinal. Just like with our Cersei, I'm going to boil this to make a tea. This tea is a favorite for a lot of Jamaicans. No, this is one of the most popular ways to enjoy water crackers. This is bushmint tea, but any other tea works. As you see, those are crazy dry and tough. Hydrating in the tea really softens up the texture. This is also done with porridge for a more substantial meal. That's now much softer, but it still has a good bite, not soggy. This is just a temporary hunger fix, especially in the mornings, but tough crackers and tea is a solid 7 out of 10. That was simple and light, but if you want something a little sweeter and more indulgent, that's where sugar dumplings come in. Made from just flour, salt, sugar, and sometimes, but not always, baking powder. Add enough water to form a thick batter and we are in business. The thickness of this varies a lot depending on who is making it, but it's usually a batter. Add a splash of oil to our pan and we can get frying. This was one of my favorite struggle foods. A little bit of sweetness in our dumpling made it much more enjoyable. Saturday was market day, so we were mostly out of food by then. This was one of my favorite early afternoon snacks after we were done with Saturday morning cartoons. Quick, filling and delicious. This was always a winner. Most times while frying sugar dumpling, I would run out of oil or didn't have any to begin with, so I would just cook it in the pan same way. Without oil, covering helps them cook much better. That is it. These have a light chewy texture that I really like. The ones cooked with less oil have a slightly different taste and texture. These are more nostalgic because I hardly ever had oil on those Saturdays. We would have these with either some tea or beverage, but anyway you slice it, sugar dumplings are a proper 8.5 out of 10. Moving from sugar dumplings onto some popular sweet treat staples that have been stopping gaps for generations. First up we have spice bun. These sweet single serving buns are usually had with cheese. True struggle was having bun without cheese, but since I grew up in the country, that meant I could have this with pear. I enjoy this much more growing up. The sweet works really well with the avocado. It doesn't work as well with the warm spices though, so this one is a 7 out of 10. Our next sweet treat is bulla. These dense sweet cakes have always been very affordable and has been produced in Jamaica for generations. I love these mini versions, they are a really easy snack. Unlike with a spice bun, bullas being sweet, simple and lightly spiced makes them the perfect pairing for avocados. Bulla and pear is always a banger, 8.5 out of 10. Alright, we have enjoyed our sweet treats, now it's time to get a bit more serious. Growing up, tin food was really cheap. A lot of these can't be even called struggle food today. Tin food is quick, convenient and you get a ton of flavor for almost nothing. First up we have bully beef, otherwise known as corned beef. Because of its price today, this feels like a splurge, but growing up this was a cheap way to make a quick delicious meal. Very few things in this video can be called struggle food nowadays and bully beef is definitely not one of them. This canned beef mince is already cooked, so we usually don't do too much to it. We just need to saute some of our standard aromatics. Hot pepper, onion, scallion. We could stop there, but tomato and sweet pepper can also be added. Even veggies like these used to be very cheap, but today that's a different story. To stretch this, we sometimes add a bit of kernel corn. A little splash of ketchup adds a bit of acidity and keeps the corned beef moist. Since the bully beef is already cooked, we only need to heat it up a bit. That is it. The most popular side for this is probably white rice. Having this with avocado is kind of cheating, but growing up this was a quick, cheap weeknight dinner. Rich, meaty savoriness and loaded with a ton of flavor. Bully beef gets a solid 7.7 out of 10. This would have a much higher score if corned beef was cheaper, but being quick and tasty makes this a favorite, even today. Corned beef works great with white rice, but so does tin mackerel. This goes by a lot of names. Shakeout, flash out, tin boom, or my favorite, dirty gal. Mackerel in tomato sauce has been cheaply keeping hunger at bay for generations of Jamaicans. It's already cooked, so we just need to quickly heat it up. We saute the standard aromatics to add extra flavor. Most people love mackerel with a good amount of spice. Once the aromatics are slightly browned and fragrant, we can go in with the shakeout. That sauce will be loaded with flavor. We don't waste any flavor, so rinse out that tin with a bit of water and add it to the pot. Season with black pepper and a bit of salt. Let that simmer for a couple minutes and we are in business. I personally love the tomato sauce the most, and when I was younger I would skip out the mackerel. This works excellent with white rice, boiled dumplings, or really any of the starchy sides we covered earlier in the video. This can sometimes taste extra fishy if not prepared properly or you use a bad brand. But being much cheaper than corned beef and just as quick and easy to prepare, this gets a solid 8 out of 10. Cooking up some flash out is great, but sometimes you want to grab something without turning on the stove. These are Vienna sausages. You could cook them up, but they are already soft, delicate, and usually have a good flavor already. If I had a little extra money after school, I would buy one of these on the long walk home. A straw worked really well for getting out each individual sausage. I would start with the center one so everything else came out easy. But on rare occasions, there are no center ones. Local Viennas have a very clean, straightforward taste. I love the spicy ones, and growing up these kept hunger at bay until dinner time. Cheap, convenient and tasty, Vienna sausages get a delicious 7 out of 10. Vienna weren't the only things we had straight out of the can. Sardines were another big stopgap. Today I can find a crazy amount of sardine variations. Sardines in oil, soya oil, olive oil and water, boneless, steaks and flavored sardines. It's still harder to find old classics like a Brunswick sardine in olive oil though. Although a lot of people cooked up canned sardines, I hardly ever had it like that. Sardines are a very simple fare. Put a can or two on a plate, add some fresh sliced scotchy, maybe a bit of onion, sprinkle over a little salt and a little pepper. Lightly mix and mash all of that together and we have a quick, tasty, protein-rich treat to have with bread or crackers. Sardines are usually extra fishy, but this gets a decent 6.5 out of 10. Next up, we have canned tuna. Not something I had a special relationship with, I only use it whenever there was nothing else. Adding a bit of mayo, hot pepper and seasoning with salt and black pepper made a decent spread for a sandwich. Not my favorite and not the cheapest option, so this gets a 6.5 out of 10. We have an honorable mention with baked beans in tomato sauce. We cook this up with saltfish and aromatics for a quick hearty meal. Tasty and filling, this gets a solid 8 out of 10. That's it for canned food. Now, let's get into the meat of the matter. These next struggle foods take advantage of cheap cuts of meat to make a delicious meal. First up we have chicken neck. Full of bones and little to no meat, chicken neck are not the most sought after, making them a very cheap cut, at least when I was young. This is great for soup, but it also made a ton of different struggle meals. Rinse with vinegar, clean up and chop them a bit smaller, season with salt, a generous amount of black pepper and all-purpose seasoning. Give that a proper mix and let it marinate for a bit. Next, we are going to fry these off to cook them and develop some flavor. Get rid of the excess oil and then hit that with some aromatics. Garlic, onion, scotch bonnet, scallion and tomatoes. Saute that off to deepen those flavors, then add some cooked ackee. Hit that with some more black pepper and a bit of salt and we are set. I had some fried dumplings going and a pot of chocolate tea to pair this up with for a solid Sunday morning dish for very cheap. This is usually done with chicken back instead of neck, but it's equally as delicious. Rich and creamy ackee with a meaty savory kick from the chicken neck. This dish doesn't taste like a struggle, 8 out of 10. Next up we have one of the most iconic struggle meals from what used to be one of the cheapest meat cuts. This is chicken back, fatty, bony and traditionally ridiculously cheap. The first thing we have to do is clean this up and remove the fat and skin. To make the most of the chicken back, we render down all of that skin and fat for a very flavorful oil. This immediately ups the value of this cheap cut because right off the bat we don't need any additional oil. We also get extra oil that we can use in other meals. To get our chicken back ready, season with salt, pepper, ground allspice, all-purpose season, fresh seasons like onion, scallion, ginger, hot pepper and fresh thyme because dry thyme is a scam. We also want a little bit of Jamaican curry powder. Mix and marinate for at least 30 minutes. To cook this up, we need some of that rendered chicken fat. Add curry to that oil to cook it off to make it more fragrant, aka burn in the curry. Next, add the marinated chicken and saute until we get a bit of color. Once our meat is brown to satisfaction, we can go in with a bit of carrot and potatoes. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is typical of Jamaican stews where we add veggies, broad beans or even spinach to stretch the stew and make the gravy more substantial. Next, submerge the chicken back with water and simmer until the meat is tender. Taste, Season with salt and fresh seasons. Simmer for a few more minutes, and now we have what's for the longest time the cheapest, most delicious chicken stew you can make. Curry chicken bok. Whether served up with white rice or boiled dumplings, this dish is always a banger. Savory, filling, and more than just stopping a gap. This is more than struggle. This is comfort food. 9 out of 10. Fresh cheap meats are incredible, but for the longest while, salted protein were a very affordable way to make an incredible meal. With a little finesse, we can transform the humble into restaurant quality food. Traditionally, these were cheaper than their fresh counterparts, so they became staples, but today that setup has flipped. Nowadays, these are local delicacies. I will only cover a couple more dishes in this category, otherwise I would be here all day. First up, we have ton cornmeal with saltfish. This, for a lot of people, was just considered dog food. But prepared right, this can impress anyone. Start by desalting the saltfish, then clean and flake it. To get cooking, start with sauteing aromatics. These are some of the same ones we use in a lot of our earlier recipes. Garlic, scallion, onion, fresh thyme, scotch for heat and flavor, tomatoes for a bit of umami and acidity. Then we saute off that saltfish to build up those flavors. Next, the cornmeal goes in. It's mixed with cold water first so it doesn't get lumpy. Slowly cook this on low, adding water or coconut milk to manage the thickness as it cooks. This takes about 30 to 40 minutes. When the cornmeal is no longer grainy and it has a smooth mouthfeel, it is ready. Growing up, ton cornmeal felt like a real struggle. I hated the gritty mouthfeel and the taste of cornmeal. Later on, after trying it myself, I realized that it was simply undercooked, and sauteing some aromatics did wonders for the flavor. Properly cooked though, ton cornmeal is a banger. It's rich, filling, and a great one-pot meal. Usually with struggle food, we want it quick, but doing ton cornmeal right takes a bit of extra effort. 8 out of 10. It costs a bit more and takes time, but when done properly, ton cornmeal and saltfish earns its place as a flavorful bellyful classic. To finally wrap up this video, let's talk about salt mackerel. Jamaicans have a lot of mackerel, but it's rarely ever fresh. It's usually canned or salted. Just like with saltfish, we first have to desalt this by boiling in fresh water. Clean and get rid of the bones. And to get everything ready, we start by sauteing some aromatics, just like what we did with our saltfish. We are making salt mackerel rundown. This is a point of contention for a lot of Jamaicans. With a rundown, you start by reducing coconut milk and you don't use any extra oil. I get much better flavors by starting with a saute first, then adding fresh coconut milk to let it reduce. It's not traditional, but sauteing aromatics upfront for stews is a reliable way to get an easy flavor boost, so I will always take that every time. Once the coconut milk is reduced to my liking, I will add my salted mackerel. This has been going for a while and will add some fresh flavors, so adding some fresh veggies create layers of flavors and a lot of depth. Usually you cook rundown a bit more than this until it's more oily, but I want that custardy sauciness. Add in some optional okra and we are in business. The roast foods we covered earlier in the video are the perfect pairing for this. A little extra sauce is going to make a big difference with that breadfruit. Rundown is very involved, takes a bit more time, but you end up with a rich, nutty and all-round flavorful meal that's filling and comforting. This is a solid 8 out of 10. Takes a bit more work and costs a bit more today, but it delivers on taste and comfort. You could also use saltfish instead of salt mackerel for a different vibe. Combine with any of our struggle food and we have a proper meal fit for any occasion. There's so much more when it comes on to Jamaican struggle meals that we could cover, but that video would probably go on for another 2 hours. Make sure to drop your favorite in the comments and tell us about your struggle meals. I will leave links in the description for some of the recipes in this video so you can check those out. I'm Nick, thanks a ton for sticking around, you're a real legend for that. Bless up, and I'll catch you in the next one.